Barry Michael Aldridge is a multi-award winning, art school trained, Chartered Institute of Marketing qualified designer, fellow member, and fully chartered marketeer. In this video podcast series, Train of Thought, Barry takes a deep dive into the subject of digital disruption.
I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by Paul Ince, CEO of LikeMind Media. Paul, pleasure to see you. Please, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, Barry. It's great to be here. Yeah, so I'm Paul Ince, CEO of LikeMind Media. We're a content marketing consultancy, and we specialize in understanding the different customer journeys that your target audience will take and mapping content to them so we can move them along that journey, hopefully to the point where they buy something.
Perfect. Love it. And you and I think we've known each other for 10 years, probably now, something like that. So can you remember where we first met?
Well, I've met so many people in the last 10 years, but I think it was maybe a workshop that I delivered. Don't ask me what it was about, but I would imagine it would be a workshop.
Okay, I believe it was either two things. It was either the Digital Expo 2015, and that was at Leicester Tigers, so it could have been there. Or I think it was in Buxton 2017, and you were running a social media workshop, and I remember you trying to show people Snapchat, I think it was, and everyone was looking at you completely gone out. So I believe it was. I believe it was actually in Buxton, and Rubina was there as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where it was. But it's fair to say we've known each other a fair while, and a lot of it has been through D2N2 and Chamber of Commerce, hasn't it? So
yeah.
So I've got a couple of icebreaker questions for you here, Paul. Well, the first one is, what made you decide to become a CEO and work for yourself effectively?
Right. So I'll try and give you the short version of this, but I was actually working for a national IT company, IT support company that provided IT to businesses. And I was working as a solutions architect, really. And what that involved was me essentially talking to businesses about what they could have or how something might look. I didn't have to get into the detail. I just sort of had to sell them the dream. I was part of the sales team, but I wasn't a salesperson. I would just be wheeled into a sales meeting. I'd sort of paint this picture and tell this story about what they could have and how it would improve their business. And then I was wheeled out and the salesperson would clinch the deal. So although I did have a commission structure in place, it just wasn't as good as the salesperson. And ultimately, I realized one day that I was making other people a lot of money because I was the one that was selling it, really. I just wasn't doing the admin stuff. Now, that's when I decided to leave. But in terms of what I wanted to do, I, as part of that solutions architect role, was sort of asked, well, what's this thing called Twitter? This is about 2008, right? So nearly 20 years ago now. What's this thing called Twitter? And it was fairly new. And I remember that the BBC were using it to report from the Beijing Olympics. Yeah. That's all I really knew about it. So I tinkered about with it just to try and find out what it was. Oh, this is kind of my bag. I can like this. And my boss said, well, what's this thing? And I was like, oh, yeah. I know all about it. Of course I do. Because in corporate land, that's what you do. You know, say yes and you pretend that you can do things because you don't want to get fired. So basically, I got told, well, you can use that then. And so I had to learn it pretty quickly. And then I would spend some of the time when I was being a solution architect talking about the technologies, but on Twitter. And Twitter was a great place for that at the time. So when it came to setting up my own business and what I wanted to do, that was a natural progression, really, because now we would call that being a content creator.
Yeah.
But at the time, we didn't call it that. We just, I was writing blog, doing a bit of video, doing a bit of social media, but we didn't call it content creation. Just said, just doing that, whatever that is. So, so that was sort of like a natural thing for me to choose. And I thought, well, I'm doing it for this business. Surely I should be able to do it for other people. And that's what I decided to do. I had no urge to be a CEO or own my own business. There was no sort of entrepreneurial spirit in me from a young age or anything like that. So the simple answer is I don't know why I've chose to become a CEO. I kind of ended up being one, but I would have to say I wouldn't now change that after 10 years in business. I wouldn't now change it. I'm quite happy doing that.
Yeah. And I guess we've both kind of followed that corporate path, thinking that's the right thing to do and build a career and that stuff. But actually, it's kind of pivoted, hasn't it? And you reflect on things and you end up in a certain situation and you never look back, do you? And certainly the freedom that you have outside of that corporate landscape. So that's fantastic. And I do believe, I'm sure you've told me before, that that's where you started. And to think, being an IT systems architect type role and then to what you're doing now, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it? And it's been kind of an exciting one.
What I would say though is I think having the IT based background has been really helpful to carve a niche for me, because some of the questions that I get asked, although they're very creative in nature, I talk a lot about what to create and what to write or what to do on video and things like that. My expertise, if you like, is understanding how that fits with the technologies that you use. So I was able to initially we did some work with Twitter, as it then was, in terms of understanding the data that the platform used, and we were working on an app that used some of the data. So I got to know how Twitter worked. And so what I've always tried to do is understand how different platforms and the technologies that we're using in content actually work, so that we can make the right decision. So why would you use Twitter over something else, or why would you create a video over something else like a piece of text? Well, it's because the algorithm does this and this is what this wants. And it's sort of allowed me to create a bit of a niche, whereas lots of people just talk about, I don't know, how to do the video.
Yeah. So it's kind of you see beyond an app on a phone, don't you? You actually know how that works, how the script works, how the algorithms work, and it's that technical insight, isn't it? And I think for myself, I started off scripting and coding, and that was my angle into marketing itself. So it's for me as well. It's understanding the code and what's going on behind the scenes. All the glue rather than what you see on the surface. So yeah, it's good stuff. And I think both of us do have that techie background. So kind of moving on, when you think about digital disruption, Paul, what does that mean to you?
Well, it's 2026 and we've been using the word digital for a long time. And I guess in the same way that I would say, well, digital marketing is just marketing now, because everything is pretty much digital. Not everything, but pretty much everything is digital. We don't need to say I'm an expert in digital marketing, because really, if you have to specify that, then you need to maybe do a little bit of more reading. But in the same way, like digital disruption, we're so digital. I'm not entirely sure what the radical change is, but of course, technology changes all the time. So there's always going to be some disruption to business models or the way that we do things. I mean, if you look at things like AI at the moment, there's a whole lot of noise around AI and what's it doing and what's it capable of and how is it shifting our behaviors. I think any kind of disruption shifts end user or humans' behavior to a certain extent, and that's what I see as digital disruption in inverted commas.
Yeah. So it's something that changes attitude or behavior and that kind of stuff. Yeah, and there's a lot of hype around AI, and that in itself is a huge subject, isn't it? And it will be interesting to see how that will play out. I mean, in terms of like large language models, did you see that coming, or was that a complete curveball for you?
Oh, that's a really good question, because just touching on what I've mentioned about working with Twitter in the early days. So one of the things that we were looking to do was build an app that essentially took the data from what people were posting in Twitter, which was all public, and trying to identify buying signals. That was the
Yeah.
kind of angle that we were looking at. How do we identify what people are looking to buy? And the example that we would use was, let's imagine that you're a business selling yellow pencils, and you only sell yellow pencils, and not orange pencils or yellow pens, but yellow pencils. You would be able to search Twitter's public data and find out everybody that mentions yellow pencils, that says I'm looking for a yellow pencil, or I've broken my yellow pencil, and we were looking at that to try and find out who would be a good target for businesses. And we used the publicly available API. We spent a lot of money with Twitter to gain access to the next level of data behind that. This is all before like looking at people's data became scandalous with Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah.
And we weren't doing anything that wasn't available, that Twitter didn't make available. It wasn't dodgy at all. But
Well, it was all public domain stuff, wasn't it? It was out there.
It was. But looking at the data behind it and gaining access to that was like really, really kind of fascinating. And we used machine learning to try and work out what the buying signals were. Now, to me, and I'm no expert on AI, okay, like I'm just going to put that out there. But where we are now with that is not too dissimilar from what we were looking at nearly 10 years ago, but it's just bigger. So why do I think about that? Well, I think about it because some of it was being done 10 years ago. And so what that makes me feel is now, because I'm not in the weeds of it now, there are things that these technology companies are doing that we just don't know about yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's, we're allowed to know about LLMs and interact with it now, but there's stuff that they are doing that we just do not know or have any concept of what that's going to be.
Yeah, sure. I mean, going off piece a bit, but it doesn't matter. But I often think, should these LLMs have just been unleashed onto the world, or should there been some kind of explanation as to what it is and how the technology works? Because I think it put a lot of fear into people. I had to explain to so many people that it's not self-aware and how it works and how it kind of returns that information to you in such a human-like language. The amount of people that thought that this stuff has got its own consciousness and is a sentient kind of being, and I do wonder, should things like that just be thrown onto the world, or should there be some kind of almost regulation and easing of it, and stuff like that? And that is a difficult one, I think, for either you or I to answer. But I think with tech, sometimes it just races ahead and then throws it onto the world, and we're like, whoa, what's this? We're completely unprepared for it. So yeah, there's a lot to be kind of asked there about how you do regulate this stuff. But I mean, in terms of looking at what you were doing sort of nearly 10 years ago, when you think about innovation, Paul, what comes to mind with innovation, and what does innovation mean to you?
Well, I think innovation happens all the time. I think of people challenging what's currently acceptable. I think people who innovate are often brave, and they enjoy or accept a certain amount of risk. I mean, I'm excited by certain innovation, like using AI to decide whether a scan is likely to show some kind of cancer that is missed by the human eye, or finding a vaccine for something like HIV, which of course has been around for decades, and we've still not got there. Things like that, using technology and innovation to progress things that benefit human society faster, I am all for. I'm not a particularly fan of generative AI, which some people think is weird because I'm a marketing person. So why would I not like it? Well, it's because generative AI is pretty much based on other people's work, and I value the work that I do and my original thinking. And like you say, it's not sentient, so it can't come up with its own ideas. Anything that doesn't really contribute significantly to society, I'm not a massive fan of. Like, sometimes just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should.
Yeah, definitely. And we were kind of talking a bit off air, weren't we, about that, about using technology for the better and find better treatments and stuff like that. And I agree totally. Just because you can do something doesn't always mean that you should do something, and should you actually pursue that path or take it in a better direction. So yeah, exciting
It's
stuff.
very interesting, the conversation around this kind of thing, because actually people lack nuance, or nuance is quite a difficult thing to do, I think. So, I have lots of conversations in the creative space around AI and the use of AI, and I say I'm not very excited by it. I can stand in front of a PC and I can record a training course. With my face. I'm an experienced trainer. I can talk. I can create that workshop, if you like, and I can probably sell that and make some money from it. Okay. Do I really want an AI version of me out there just doing like fake Paul, running a course that I've quickly knocked up out of AI? Probably not. However, let's imagine that somebody has confidence issues, or they have a disfigurement that in our society isn't deemed to be camera friendly or whatever. Actually, some of these technologies would allow such a person to use their knowledge that they have and create a digital version of themselves to put out in a world that would maybe maybe society values that more, but it would allow them to make money in perhaps a way that they wouldn't before. So I think that it's such a nuance. Like, sometimes it's not great to be able to just knock out loads of garbage, AI slop and all the rest of it, but there's always an angle that you think, actually, in this scenario, this is a really good use of that generative or creative technology.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one idea I had was I was thinking about AI being used for somebody, say somebody's got dyslexia and they've got a really powerful mind, they've got brilliant ideas, really sharp, really clever, and they've really got something to say, and yet they find it difficult to articulate that. Well, in some ways, AI could help them. AI could put together a decent structure of literacy that would get their ideas out there. So I think it's, if you can use it for the positive, that's brilliant, isn't it? But I agree, not just churn out AI because it's there kind of thing, but really to make, if it's of use and of benefit, then that's got to be looked at, hasn't it? But so in terms of kind of third and final icebreaker question here. So in terms of EDI, so that's equality, diversity and inclusion, what does that mean to you, and how important is that to you?
Well, for me, it's about representation, fairness, opportunity, acknowledging my own privilege as well. I am a big supporter of EDI initiatives. I'm very pro, let's get people on stages. Let's give up my slot in favor of somebody else. I think there are lots of different, again, it's nuance. There's lots of different characteristics to consider here. One that is not thought of often enough is class and people's ability to attend. So if we were to take speaking, for example, how do you get speakers who've got something to say? But if you're not paying the speaker, how are you asking them to like spend their own money to get somewhere? Are you expecting them to fly somewhere? Well, maybe they don't have the money for that. So it's also thinking about class, as well as things like ethnicity and gender and sexuality and all those other things that we perhaps know more of. And there's intersectionality there in terms of like different things crossing. I think it's a complicated discussion, and I think the conversation around that is way too simplified all the time, and that's why people tend to disagree or fall out about it. People have sort of almost like lost the ability to think a bit more deeply about what that is, and tend to offer an opinion before thinking things through.
Yeah, and that's quite important there that you brought in the wealth divide as well, isn't it? Because that is all intersected, as you say, and there's all sorts of things that create that wealth divide. And actually, technology could shrink that barrier, couldn't it? I think if everybody's got access to technology and they can innovate, they can close that class divide.
Yeah, for sure. But on the other hand, some technologies are prohibitive. If you need, I don't know, let's use OpenAI as an example. Let's say you need OpenAI Pro or whatever the plan is. Well, that might not be available to everybody from a cost perspective. So it is something to think about and to put on the table, amongst other things.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds good stuff. Thank you, Paul. So let's move into the actual interview here. So that was brilliant. Always a great discussion to be had with yourself. Okay, so this is going to be quite a retro episode. We're going to go back in time a little bit, and we're going to go back to the origins of the internet. Really, it's early days. You know, you're looking mid to late 90s, early 2000s, and I want to look at, Paul, a couple of big companies that were market leaders, and they basically kind of got caught out by this digital disruption stuff. So the first one I want to look at is Kodak. Kodak was once the market leader within camera technology, but it suffered heavily. And what do you think, Paul, were the main drivers and catalysts towards the demise of Kodak?
I loved taking pictures. I've got boxes of photos in my loft of the heady days of the 90s, where I'm quite pleased that they're not on social media. You know,
it was a bit mad. It was mad.
I'm pleased that they're physical only. I don't need everybody to know. I think where Kodak was concerned, I mean, look, it was the leader, the market leader in terms of film. It certainly had the biggest brand awareness, I think, that and Fuji perhaps.
Yeah.
But they just didn't, I guess, grasp what was going on around them. Maybe they didn't spot the move to digital. I don't know. I heard that they invented the digital camera. I don't know if that's true or is it?
In the 70s. Yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous, really. You know, you invent something and then go, yeah, but like we're making all this money from film, so we'll just stick with that. I guess they thought it wouldn't take off, or if they did, not to the extent that it actually did in the end.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of thinking about this last night, actually. So it's kind of tragic that they did invent the first digital camera. So they had the technology. And by the way, I don't think they ever fully went bust. They continued, but they had to downsize and restructure. And I think they went into digital print or print technology. So they didn't completely collapse, but they definitely lost all that market share. And I think the film was their huge margin. That was their profit-making product. And I guess when I look back at it, so get this, so in the late 90s, I was at art and design school. I was at Loughborough, and we were actually learning how to develop film in the darkroom and stuff like that. And digital cameras existed, but they were rubbish at that time. Something like it was only a couple of meg that they could take as a picture, you know, so the quality wasn't at all there. So I think maybe that was this kind of that evolution of digital tech was a bit slow burning. So maybe Kodak didn't think that would really take off. I was kind of thinking as well, could there have been internally a divide between marketing, finance, and the board decisions? So if marketing could see this digital disruption coming, but the finance people were seeing in the here and now what the biggest profit was, and they would be saying to the board, well, forget all this digital sci-fi stuff because this is where our money's at. And I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of sort of contemplating what it could have been, and it could have been really poor decision making all around internally between different departments. But I mean, whatever it was, they definitely missed it out on it altogether. And I think the tragic thing is they didn't have to.
You can totally see how it happens, though. I mean, with corporate culture, there's always one team or department battling another, and if a company is beholden to its shareholders, which obviously a lot of the big companies are, the pressure is on to make money, and so it's a risk to pivot. You've got to have a real strong case to pivot, and if the money's coming in through film, until it's not, there's the motivation is not there, or there's some reticence there to make that change, I guess. So yeah, I can totally see how it happens. I guess it's, if you look at something like Apple as a comparison, they made Macintosh computers, and I know they've always made that, but look at their change to phones. We think about the iPhone when we think of Apple, really, and now TV perhaps, but the chief there, Steve Jobs, was the innovator. He was the one that had the vision. And if, I don't know about Kodak, but if the digital camera came from like a bit of a side project or a new technology or innovation team, and the bigwigs didn't have that innovative mindset, the culture of innovation doesn't exist. And therefore you can see how that ends up with them being left behind.
Definitely, I totally agree with that. And I think I sometimes wonder if innovation itself doesn't sit very well in that very rigid corporate structure with a hierarchy and an org chart where it's difficult to get things pushed through, And I've actually been there myself. I've been in that situation where I've innovated and tried to push it through the bureaucratic red tape that it was. And it actually got taken away. And we missed out on something that I think was really huge. So yeah, fascinating. I mean, we don't know the ins and outs of Kodak, do we? But it's kind of a shame that happened. But I think it's a lesson as well, isn't it? To these big companies, really, not to rest on your laurels at all. So. Oh yeah. So what I want to ask you here is, before we get on to the next big company, one good thing for Kodak actually is that there's this big resurgence in all things retro, like DVDs, vinyl, all that kind of stuff. So what do you think that is? What's driving that?
Probably the state of the world would be my view. I think if you look at the 2020s, not the greatest decade that we're going to remember. I mean, if you start with plague, war, general economic instability, it's not got a lot going for it. And when I think society goes through that level of trauma, it tends to look through a lens of the past with more affection, and I think we romanticize it a little bit. I listened to a very interesting podcast a while ago, and I can't remember the name of it now, but it was something like it started in the 90s. And the concept of the podcast was, all these things that you think are a problem now, you think are a problem recently, but actually the problem started in the 90s, and it sort of focused on the end of the Cold War as being like the key cause of most of the problems, but it just took decades for it to get to where we are. But so we looked at the past, where maybe the past isn't as rosy as it was, but that's almost pointless, because we think about it however we think about it. I think the past feels safe. Maybe there's an element of, we were all younger, so we look to better times. We mentioned the 90s just before, but in the 90s, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I didn't have a house, didn't have a mortgage, didn't have kids, didn't have responsibility. So of course it was the best time. I could go Greek island hopping, I could go to Ibiza for 3 months and disappear. You could do all these things. And you thought, well, it's great, but maybe it was great because you didn't have the heavy burden that you
Yeah.
have as a as a real grown up. So we look back to that and think, well, that wasn't that great, but of course maybe it wasn't.
Mm, I think we look back with nostalgia, don't you? And it's true. We didn't have any commitments yet, and no mortgage, no nothing like that, and what have you. And I think we were very fortunate with the music scene back then. I have to say, there was a lot of liberation going on as well, and there was a big kind of movement, wasn't there, about I think our generation at the time really wanted to change humanity, didn't we? I think, talking about EDI, we were very much about equal rights and all that stuff. And we were campaigners, really, but we were,
Mm,
yeah. I mean, I look back at it and just think, wow, what a time to be a teenager and in your early 20s. It was
yeah.
fantastic. And I wonder as well, Gen Z, the younger generation, they seem to be really hankering for all this retro stuff. My youngest niece said that she would happily give up her smartphone and give up social media, and she would love to sort of go back to the 90s and stuff like that. And I kind of wonder, what is it that's driving the younger generation to want to? It's not nostalgia for them, is it? But what is it that makes them want to return to a time before?
I mean, it's not nostalgia for them because they didn't experience it, but I would argue that uh, older friends or their parents
Mm,
or older family members are telling them that it was better.
yeah,
Because we all do that, don't we? As we get older, we say it's not as good as it used to be. And there was a study done um, ages ago, where it looked at, the question was asked, um, what was a better time than now? And through the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the response is very consistent. It's when you're in your late teens and
yeah,
20s. So
sure,
it's not related to the decade or the specific time. But if you've got your parents telling you how great the 90s were, and they're playing music
yeah,
in the background or in the car all the time, that does influence you. I think the other thing is that if you look at that generation and what they've experienced over the last 6 or 7 years,
mm,
there's a whole generation that have been out of school for a couple of years, where they weren't allowed to socialize to the same extent, where they've had to go to uni and experience uni remotely. It's a very odd
yeah,
situation, and I think that will affect them for the rest of their lives. And
mm,
I don't want to sort of condescend anyone of that age, but this is more of an observation. I observe from people in the workplace, people struggling to effectively communicate.
yeah,
So a reticence to get on the telephone and speak to a customer, for example, or a reticence to ask questions, which I worry about, to be honest. Um, to be curious and inquisitive,
yeah,
I think that's a real skill and something to cherish. But I don't think any of this is their fault. I think that's the situation that we've had over the last few years.
mm,
And so again, it doesn't surprise me that they're looking at what were the alternatives, and maybe I don't need this thing in my phone. I will say this, as like
mm,
someone who has like teenage kids, like I notice how aware of things they are. I think it's a misnomer to talk about that generation as being like glued to their phone and like not being able to do X, Y, Z. There's elements of that for sure. Um, and they don't have like youth clubs and all the rest of it like that perhaps we used to. But
mm,
so many of them get it. So many of them understand what the technology is about. They're much more savvy than their parents about how it works. And there is a desire to like go, I just wish I could do it less, or I just wish it
yeah.
wasn't as important as it seems to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's so huge, isn't it? The reasons could be many, couldn't they? I mean, another thing could be, it's like when we were at school, if there was any bullying, it got left behind in the playground. But
Yeah.
nowadays, if there's any bullying, it follows you online. It's 24/7, 365. There's no escape, and there could be an element of that just wanting to let it all go, digital fatigue. Go back to a time. I mean, I was reading an article about Gen Z was saying that they love playing a record vinyl because it feels real, because you can hear. as it turns around, you can hear that crackling, and you also have to kind of listen to the entire album rather than just, pick a song here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, COVID, I think I saw it with my eldest niece actually. She was all gearing up. Well, she was doing her A levels at the time, and it was just such a rotten time for something like COVID. I think it really did impact the generation in a really bad way, and not being able to take proper exams and getting sort of mean tested with your marking and stuff like that, and not even being able to socialize. I think that at such a critical age where it's all about socializing, and I think it was really unfair and quite cruel on the younger generation there, seeing that firsthand. But I mean, it's kind of cool that everyone wants to go back to the 90s in a way. It's good to see that all coming back. Film cameras are coming back, and Kodak may well see a return of its film there, so it's exciting stuff. But yeah, we'll see how that pans out. I wonder. But I personally wasn't a big fan of Friends back in the day. I don't know about you, but my niece absolutely loves it. She loves watching Friends, but I said to her I never was really that into it. But if we move on to the second big company here, Blockbuster was once another market leader. So what do you think, Paul, happened there? What went awry?
I mean, I guess it just is another example of a company not innovating or working out what's going on. I mean, Blockbuster just completely relied on rental payment and late charges, right? And of course, you don't really get that with digital because it just stops working. So I just wonder whether they believed what was coming. Now, I read that Netflix offered to sell themselves to Blockbuster.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah, that's true.
They turned it down
Yes,
because
yeah.
they just didn't think that it would take off. So I
Mm.
mean, that's a classic example of, I don't know, like maybe like corporate arrogance. Really, we're at the top of the tree. No one can touch us. And you get a young upstart company. I mean, Spotify is a bit like that if you think about it. Like we're all playing cassettes and records and DVDs and all the rest of it, and then along comes Spotify and you can just do anything.
Yeah.
Anything you like, all those guilty pleasures that you daren't have in your record collection because you don't want your mates to spot that you own ABBA or something. You can just go and listen to that whenever you like. So, and of course, no one believed them either. So I do think whether some companies get so big and so at the front of the pack in terms of market leadership and market share, that their arrogance prevents them from believing that anybody could possibly overtake them, and then look what happened.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well that the really big organizations like that, it's difficult to pivot and move quickly as well, isn't it? So when digital disruption comes along as fast as it does, that's it. You're too big for your own good, really. I was thinking about this again last night, and there were a couple of things that. So again, Blockbuster didn't see probably the way that streaming was going to go, because in the early days of Netflix, that technology wasn't there. We were running off 56K dial-up modems and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Netflix actually started off as you would go onto their website and you would choose a film, and that would get posted to you. Okay, but Netflix were aware that technology would change, and eventually, broadband came along and streaming became possible, and Netflix evolved. Now, I don't think that Blockbuster could probably see the evolution from where it was then. Maybe they just thought it was always going to be 56K dial-up modems or something, and they couldn't really see the future too much. And the other thing I think with Blockbuster was that they were so bricks and mortar. And that was another business model. They were on the high street, and that was that. And I think they were a franchise as well. So that adds another complication, because if you come along and say, "Oh, do you want to buy this web streaming service off of us?" Well, that then centralizes the business to one kind of head office, doesn't it? And that kind of knocks out the whole franchise bricks and mortar around the world, who actually then pay you a fee to run that business on a local level. So I think that could have been something as well, that they were kind of stuck within that franchise model as well, and that could have hindered them. But were you aware that there is actually a Blockbuster left in the world?
No, it wasn't.
Were you not?
No, where is it?
It is in Oregon, USA.
Figures.
Yeah, and I'm going to see if I can screen share this. Bear with me.
Does it still have the same branding and everything?
Yeah, it does.
How are they getting away with that?
Bear with me. I'm just trying to get this. Is it not going to let me do it? That's a shame.
Oregon, eh? I mean, it's it's very liberal, is Oregon, but it's way out west, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's very much northwest. So I'm just trying to. Did you see? Oh, I've lost it. Did you see? Did that come up on your screen just then?
Yes, it did.
There you go.
There
Here we go. So to give viewers a perspective of where this is in the States. So it's right up there, not far off Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, totally the same branding. I was having a look at this last night. So there you go. There
And
it is.
are they still renting VHS and
They
DVDs
are.
or?
Yeah, they are.
How interesting.
So this is really cool. And apparently this business is absolutely thriving.
I mean, it's got merch by the looks of it, so
Yeah.
it's obviously like leaning into that. People are not just going to rent a DVD. But look, I mean, everyone talks about World War III and have done for a long time. When that happens, when there's no internet,
Yeah.
your Blockbuster is going to do very well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, this is really cool. I mean, that looks like. Do you remember the one in Loughborough? That was tiny compared to this, wasn't it?
I don't actually.
Do you know? That's me showing my age now. But I mean, this is awesome. I mean, this is so cool. This Star Wars. I was having a look at this last night. What's that? It's almost like a museum as well, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, this is that's Marty McFly's outfit, Back to the Future. So this is totally cool.
Very much looks like a Blockbuster as well.
Yeah, totally the same brand, isn't it? And it is the very last surviving one. Let's have a look at that. What's going? There you go. So this for us used to be like on a Friday night, we'd go down to Blockbuster and spend ages, wouldn't we, choosing a film and what have you.
I mean, not even Blockbuster though. I mean, when we were kids, it would be like Dave's videos, and it'd be like an independent. Blockbuster came along and kind of got rid of all the small independents.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
So I'm not gonna like lose any love for Blockbuster. The fact that it's gone, what we've got now is better.
Yeah, yeah. I'll stop sharing that. Bear with me. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of cool that it's still going, isn't it? I mean, you could argue maybe that again, like Kodak, there could be a resurgence of it if people are getting back into DVDs and what have you. But no, it's an interesting one. So I couldn't believe it myself when I first read that there is still a Blockbuster. It's doing really good business, and fair play. And I think it is very much a retrospective thing there. Oh yeah, so this is something that I didn't put on my script here. So just to talk about all things retro, and you can see very much behind me, this here, you see that?
Oh wow, yeah.
That is an Aliens comic book from 1991. So I was going through these last night. So this was totally cool. So that's that. And then I mean, I've got loads behind me there, Paul.
I can
Absolutely
see.
loads. I think the earliest comic book I've got goes back to 1977. It's a Star Wars one.
Wow.
So there's a Terminator, all stuff like
Very
that.
good.
So what do you think about comic books? I mean, for me, I love them. But do you think they'll ever, do you think they'll come back to the kind of mass that they once were?
Who knows? I mean, they weren't my thing, so like I could take them or leave them. But I do like a magazine.
Hmm?
I like to read a physical book.
Yeah,
And I think that there is something to be said for something that is analog. And I couldn't tell you whether that's me just being nostalgic or whether there's something hardwired in my brain about that. But I make notes with a pen and paper.
yeah,
Not a remarkable. I don't use an iPad or any kind of tablet. I'm very much like analog in that sense. So yeah, I guess it's whatever you're into. Cartoons definitely still exist, and therefore I guess there's always a place for comics as the analog version of that.
yeah, definitely. I hope so. So, okay, can you think of, say, 2 to 3 early internet businesses that got it completely right from the very start?
From the very start. Okay. Well, I'm going to put Amazon up
Yeah.
there
Hmm.
because I mean I think we can call that a success. Whatever you think of Jeff Bezos and the behemoth that is Amazon and what it
Yeah.
provides, which is basically everything. And a lot of us, me included, are sucked into that world where that is kind of the default thing that I look at, and I have to almost like deliberately choose not to use Amazon, and that sounds terrible. But hey, that's capitalism. Um, like it's surely got to be seen as successful at this point. I don't even know how old Amazon is, but I've seen the picture of Jeff Bezos in his office when he's got
Yeah.
hair, like on a computer. And my understanding is it wasn't an overnight success. So whether or not you could say whether they got it right from the very start, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it failed, didn't it? Before it
But
became what
it's
it
a
was.
success now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then maybe something like eBay
Yes.
is still around. You've got things like Vinted. Again, just thinking about like the kids love a bit of Vinted, and you buy electronics and all sorts from Vinted now. So eBay has definitely lost market share. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily the default one that people go to, but it's still around. It's still successful,
Yeah.
despite the competition. So I guess those two would
Yeah.
be ones that I would highlight.
Yeah, I would say eBay definitely because they got it right from the very start because they basically created this consumer to consumer platform and it was all built on trust and reviews and stuff like that. And it was what it was. And it didn't rely on high speed connectivity or anything, but it was
Mm,
an online auction, wasn't it, as such? And I mean, eBay had to start off advertising in the traditional sense. So it was very much magazine adverts and radio adverts and television adverts because sort of your SEO as we know it today hadn't really kicked in yet. So they had to use traditional advertising to drive people online. But yeah, definitely, they right from the very start. And like you say, they've lost market share because the other competition has come along as it has. But they're still here, aren't they? I think PayPal, maybe they were about back then.
yeah, I guess they were. I mean, it's successful. Wasn't that Peter Thiel to begin with?
I think so. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
So yeah, so that I think it was quite a turbulent time in many ways, but I
Yeah.
think that those lot did get it right, didn't they?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
Sure.
kind of leads me on to the internet bubble, the .com crash. So what do you think caused that?
I mean, from what I recall, um,
It's going back a bit.
it is going back, but it's sort of when everyone talks about AI, I always think about the .com bubble because
Yeah.
the AI situation is a bubble that we're experiencing now. Um, But I think the thing with .com was it was just hugely overblown. People's expectation of what was coming just wasn't matched with the reality. And
Yeah.
again, I do think that's what's happening with AI, because we're not, no one's created the AI yet to do the dishwasher or, do the ironing and stuff like that. It's like, let's create art instead. But people's expectation just wasn't matched. And then, of course, the markets react badly to that. And there's a lot of parallels to today. But the thing about humans is that we don't learn from the mistakes of the past.
No.
So these things go in cycles. We're experiencing one now. I fully think that the AI bubble will burst at some point, and it will be a repeat of the .com. But we have these things every so many years, and this is just the next one. So I think there's always an excitement, and then whether or not it matches expectation is really what causes it.
Yeah. I think as well, was it a bit of FOMO, fear of missing out, because everyone was like, we need a website, and because if we don't have a website, we get left behind, and yet, so all this money and investment was being made, and the return on investment wasn't there, because e-commerce was possible, but it was for kind of your mass businesses, it wasn't at the scale that it is now. So the internet was in its early days, and everyone was investing, but the internet was too young to yield a return on investment, and it all led to one big crash, didn't it? Everyone racing to get a website, putting all this money into it, and then actually not delivering anything. So yeah, I mean, it was in many ways it was kind of well, I was doing a lot of web development at the time, so as much as people were saying to me, I need a website, I was like, happy days. But when the .com crash came, I went to work for a printing company. So it was, but it steadied out in the end, didn't it? I always felt at the time, I thought this will become something. It's just got to grow up a bit and mature and find its way. And of course, it has become everything nowadays, isn't it? So Paul, if people like you and I were in the mid-90s to early 2000s, if you and I back then, or the likes of us, were to be teleported today to 2026, what do you think would completely freak us out or amaze us?
I think people would be disappointed because on Tomorrow's World, we were all told we would be eating dehydrated food and flying around in flying vehicles by now.
Yes, yeah.
So like to realize that we're still firing bullets at each other, that we're arguing, and that racism is still a massive, like I think we'd be like, really we've like not figured this out yet. So I do think we would be disappointed. Some bits I think people would find like weird, like smartphones. I don't think we would have thought about in the 90s. So we'd have thought, okay, that's weird. What do you mean you're watching TV but like in your hand? But yeah, I just think when it comes to it, I think what we were told would happen hasn't materialized.
That's a good angle. Yeah, definitely. So we'd be kind of really disappointed. That I think sociologically, wouldn't we? We'd be like, what? We haven't got any better. We're still killing each other, and there's still all this, hate crime and upset. And I think that would be really tragic, wouldn't it? I think especially because really the 90s was all about kind of like to put it as it was all about peace and love and unity, wasn't it? It was all about coming together.
It was.
So you're right. I think we'd be absolutely devastated to think that society hasn't really come up. In fact, in many ways, I think it may appear to us, if we were teleported to now, that it's actually gone backwards.
Yeah. Well, I agree, and I'm afraid I'm one of those people that tells my kids that all the time, and they're like, "Just go back there then." So that shows you what they think about it.
And what about say your kids or the younger generation, if they were teleported from now 2026 back to say the mid-90s, what would they make of it?
Well, they just think it was a completely different time. I mean, they refer to it as like the late 1900s, which immediately makes it sound much further away than what it was.
Yeah.
I think they think it was just basic.
Mm.
Really, really basic. The thought of not having access to the internet is a complete disaster for them
Yeah.
anyway, just despite them knowing that, yeah, maybe I don't want a smartphone, or maybe I want a little less screen time or whatever. There's so much that's convenient to them that it just feels so antiquated. They can understand the potential joy of being let out to play on a Saturday, like, and coming back at tea time,
Yeah.
and not, they can kind of understand that, I guess. But when I tell them that I went to Greece at the beginning of the school holidays and came back at the end, and my parents had no clue like what I was doing and were fine with it,
Mm.
they can't understand that, because of course, like, my generation is now much more of a helicopter kind of parent. So yeah, I think they just think it's like very, very basic. They feel like it's a long time ago,
Mm.
and it is.
It is.
It is. But of course, when you've lived it, you think it
Well,
was
it
yesterday.
only seems like yesterday, I suppose, but
Yeah.
actually, yeah, you think, cool, that was a while ago. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I wonder, careful what you wish for. So I wonder if the younger generation were teleported back, they'd probably be like, "Can we go back home now?"
Yeah, they would. They
Yeah.
would. They find it boring. They find it boring
Mm.
because and I do sound like an old person now, but they don't have, not all of them, but plenty of them don't have the skills to cope with boredom. Like, they've not had to find things to do
Mm.
because it's all available.
Yeah.
So that's a skill. That's a skill that you learn. So I think they would struggle to a certain extent. But a lot of young people do arts and crafts, and crocheting and knitting is like big now, where it wasn't. I
Mm.
can't imagine anyone of their age in the 90s going, okay, let's crochet a granny square. Like, that would be the worst thing that you could do. So it would just be considered sad. But now it's a thing. So I think they would think it was basic. Some of them would probably vibe with it because of the nostalgia, but
Yeah.
plenty of them would not cope with it.
Mm. Definitely. I mean, here's something for you. I mean, when I was at Loughborough University, social media existed. But that was that was considered geeky. That was for the tech geeks on the campus across Epinal Way, across the road. Yeah, we just weren't into it at all. We didn't want to be into it or anything like that. So yeah, I wonder if they'd struggled with lack of social media and stuff as well. So yeah, interesting stuff. So Paul, in terms of AI and digital and all this stuff going on, what human traits do you think that AI will never replace?
Well, I said towards the beginning of this episode, perhaps we don't know what's possible because we're not being told. But
Mm.
so far, emotion, empathy, kindness, despite what they claim, these things are so complex. I just don't see how AI can reproduce those, or any
Mm.
technology can reproduce those. What we've got is LLMs based on things that already exist. So, I do worry about people using these tools as their counselor or their
Yeah.
girlfriend or
Mm.
whatever. Those core emotions that make us human, I think, will be difficult to replicate. It'd be interesting to see if they get close, or if people are like, well, it's 80% there, so I'll just go with that. That feels human
Yeah.
enough for me to deal with.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I think it's important that LLMs sound convincing, don't they? Because that's the natural language kicking in.
Yeah.
So they can sound like they care on a personal level, but they don't, and
They don't care. They absolutely
yeah.
don't care.
And they actually, they don't actually know what they're saying as well. So that's another thing for people to think about. Like, they'll churn out all this information, but that's not a conscious understanding of the
Yeah.
words that are being shown to you. Yeah, I think you're right there. I think empathy, kindness, care, compassion, love, those are so intrinsic and so human. That is almost that I can't imagine that being replicated, digital or whatever. And I think to make AI truly sentient and self-aware, I think that is so complex to do, nigh on impossible, and would even the mega tech companies want to do that is another thing. That's an ethical concern as well, isn't it? But as it stands at the minute, I agree with you totally. So empathy, kindness, and caring, that is very much a human trait. So Paul, I think that brings us to the end of this interview. So I just want to thank you so much for taking part. It's been a pleasure to see you again. It's been a long time. When did we last see each other? It's a few years back now.
No idea.
No,
A lot's
it could have.
happened.
Yeah, it could have been before COVID, But no, it's a pleasure to see you. Always good to talk to you. And can you tell people where to find your website, LikeMind?
Sure. The easiest way to access it is go to likemind.media, and you'll see me and my team and all of what we do there. And you can find me on LinkedIn as Paul Ince or BizPaul, which is the sort of online name that I've become known with, which actually goes back to that first story about Twitter in the corporate land, because that's what I set up the account as, and that stuck. So look me up at BizPaul.
That's brilliant. So that goes back to your Twitter handle, does it? At BizPaul.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Exactly what it was.
Awesome. Paul Ince, it's been a joy and a pleasure. Thank you very much.
See you soon.
See you soon.